My name is Ryan Harp, and this is FTH 202 assignment number 4 for the revolver class. Today's date is June 29th.
As with any time we're working in the shop, the first thing that we want to do is make sure that the area is safe and then the weapon is safe. So we've made sure that there's no live ammunition in the workspace. We're going to visually and physically inspect the chambers, cylinder of the firearm, as well as the barrel, making sure it's free of any obstructions, no ammunition, and we're going to keep the weapon oriented in a safe direction and not pull the trigger until it's time to do so. For assignment number 4 at FTH 202, it's going to be a 4-part assignment. The first part of our assignment is going to be to try and get a measurement of the trigger pull. We're going to use a trigger pull gauge and test the weight. The next part of the assignment, after we've done that, is we're going to disassemble the firearm, apply some die chem, and cycle the firearm several times. Disassemble the firearm again, check for any high spots that we might see, polish those out, reassemble the firearm, get a new trigger weight on the firearm, and see if we see any improvement. Step number 3 of the assignment is going to be to replace the hammer spring and the main spring, and the trigger return spring of the firearm. And then the 4th part of the assignment is we're going to perform a go or no-go check on the cylinder of the firearm. Okay, so for the first part of the assignment, as I said, we're going to be checking the trigger pull of the firearm. So we're going to verify again that all the cylinders are empty, barrel is empty, and the first way we're going to check the firearm is going to be in single action. So we're going to use a Lyman trigger pull gauge, and we're going to place it on the center, and we've got just about 6.5 pounds. So going to get a total of 3 measurements. So right about 6 pounds that time. And then for the third and final, bring that back in. So we're right at about 6.5 pounds again. So total about 6.5 pound trigger pull. So our next functions check, or our next check of the trigger, after I mark down this 6.5 pounds so I don't forget, is going to be to check the double action trigger. Alright, it's got 6.5 marked down. So in double action, we should see a significantly larger trigger pull for this. Hold on. Alright. So back at 0. Alright, so when we're pulling double action, we should see a larger trigger pull. So this time we're just at 12. Back to 0 again. About 12.25. Just that back to 0. And 11.5. So we'll get the average of those, and that'll be our weight. Alright, so as we can see, we've got some die chem applied to all of the components that we're going to be checking for wear marks. We're letting this dry for a minute. Got just a nice thin coat on here so we can easily see it scratched away wherever we have contact. So thin this out a little bit. It's looking a little thick. So get a nice thin coat on here, let it dry. We'll reassemble here in a minute. And alright, so we've just gotten done with polishing these high parts. So got a pretty good polish on the areas. Didn't remove too much material. I know it might look like it, but we were very careful to remove minimal amounts of material. So our next step after just removing the material that we removed is going to be to clean everything off. So what I'm going to do is a complete disassembly, throw it through the ultrasonic cleaner, and then reassemble and see how it feels. Since everything's been polished smooth, we removed the grit from everything. Our next step is going to be to get another trigger weight on here. Our first trigger weights, the average was 6.5 pounds and right at 12 pounds. So we're going to do 3 again. We're going to get an average 3 single action, 3 double action. So starting at 0 pounds. So 6 pounds is that first one. Again, starting at 0 pounds. 6 pounds, 6 1/8 is the second one. And we're finishing it off. I don't know if you can see that, right at 6 pounds. So dropping it by about a half pound so far, so that's good. Now for double action, we'll do 3 again. So 11 7/8. 11 3/4. And 11 3/4 again. So we can see we're at 11 3/4. So we dropped about 1/4 pound on double action and 1/2 pound on single action. So the next step to lessen the trigger pull on this is going to be to change out the springs. So we're going to change out the springs next. While I change out the springs, I'm also going to be throwing all the firearm and all its components into a parkerization real quick to re-parkerize all the surfaces that we... In reflecting on what I could have done to make the whole process a little more smooth, with smoothing everything out, one step I would have taken earlier is taking the entire weapon to my blast cabinet and just getting all the finish off and working from there. Since I was doing it anyways, that would have just smoothed out the process. Step 3, we went ahead and we've replaced the trigger spring and the main spring, the trigger return spring and the main spring. So our next task is going to be to get another weight. So we're going to do that single and double action again. So I can already tell you in single action, it's just a much more crisp, smooth pull to get that trigger back, or to get the hammer to full cock. So right now our weight on the first pull is 4 pounds. Go ahead and do it again, get back to 0. Just over 4 pounds, looks like in 1/8. Back to 0. And we're at 4 pounds dead again, so if you can see it, right at 4 pounds. Alright, so now to test the double action weight. So make sure it's back at 0, okay. So for double action, we're right at 10 pounds, this first one. Nine 7/8. And 9 7/8. If you could see that. So the final step for today's project, we've got the firearm stripped again to nothing. We're going to go ahead and do a go and a no-go check on here. So the first thing we're going to do, we're only going to check a cylinder or two. We're not going to check the whole thing. First thing we're going to do is get our go gauge. So as you can see, there's our go. We're going to place it in, ensuring that it is going in on one of the cylinders or into the area outside of the frame. So, and we're going to just attempt to pass the cylinder all the way through back to the starting point, and as you can see, we are able to freely do so. So then what we would do normally is then take this out, go to the next cylinder, and do the same thing again to ensure that we have clearance all the way around, and we would do that with all the cylinders. So that's the go gauge. Up next would be the no-go gauge. So we would place that in again, ensuring that we do so outside of the frame of the firearm, and we would attempt to cycle the cylinder, however, it will not go. So, and just for good measures, we're going to go to the next chamber. Again, entering it, and we're still at a no-go. It will not operate. And we'll go ahead and do one more. And same thing, the cylinder will not cycle through. We got a lot of work done today on the revolver. We got some trigger pull measurements, and we ended up taking the firearm totally from a 6.5 pound single action and a 12 and change double action down to a 4.5 pound, 4.25 pound single action and a 10 pound double action. And that was done through replacing all the springs and smoothing out this internal surfaces. We also took the entire gun to the blast cabinet and parkerized the entire gun and changed the finish on it. Changed the wood grips as well. And then after all the work was done, we checked it with the go and the no-go gauge. All this work came from reference material from week 3 and week 4 lecture. Week 4 lecture of FTH 202 module 4 is going to be the repair, tuning, assessment, and maintenance of revolvers, and we got a lot of that done today.